Snow fell in thick, relentless sheets outside Rusty's Tavern, a weathered dive bar clinging to the edge of I-75 in Detroit, Michigan. The night was bitter, the temperature plunging to 20 degrees, the kind of cold that bit through jackets and settled in your bones. Neon beer signs, Budweiser and Miller Lite, flickered in the grimy windows, casting a sickly red and blue glow across the snow-dusted parking lot. Inside, the air was heavy with the tang of fried chicken wings, stale whiskey, and the faint musk of old cigarette smoke, despite the city's ban. The jukebox, a relic from better days, wailed Tom Petty's Free Fallin', its scratchy notes cutting through the low hum of conversation and the clink of glasses. This was no place for tourists or outsiders. Rusty's was a local's haunt, a sanctuary for the proud, the broken, and the skeptical. A slice of American working-class grit where trust was earned and strangers were sized up before they could sit down. Keanu Reeves pushed through the heavy wooden door, his black boots crunching snow that had followed him in from the storm. His parka, soaked and heavy, clung to his shoulders, water dripping onto the scarred hardwood floor, forming puddles 3 feet from the entrance. He shook off the snow, his dark hair matted beneath the hood, and peeled it back to reveal a face weathered, not by age, but by experience. Tired eyes, a faint scruff, and a quiet intensity that didn't beg for attention. No bodyguards, no entourage, no spotlight. Just a man in a plain black t-shirt under his jacket, carrying nothing but a small metal urn tucked in his pocket, and a weight in his chest that no one in the room could see. Keanu moved without urgency, his steps deliberate, like someone who knew exactly where he was and why, even if the crowd didn't. The bar was a patchwork of faces, tired auto workers, off-shift mechanics, and a few drifters who'd wandered too far from the interstate. Heads turned, not in recognition but out of habit, sizing up the newcomer. Keanu didn't look like he belonged. He wasn't loud like the guys swapping stories over beers, nor flashy like the occasional wannabe hustler who'd stumble in with fake gold chains. He was just quiet. Too quiet for a place like Rusty's, where bravado was currency and silence was a challenge. A few patrons nudged each other, smirking. "Who's this guy?" a man in a flannel muttered, his voice half drowned by the jukebox. A woman with a faded Pistons cap snorted, "Looks like he got lost on his way to a poetry reading." Keanu ignored them, his eyes scanning the room for a moment before settling on the farthest booth in the corner, tucked away from the neon glow and the ancient TV blaring a Red Wings game. He nodded at the bartender, a grizzled man named Eddie, with a gray beard and a permanent scowl. Eddie tilted his chin toward the booth, his voice rough as gravel. "Sit there, pal. No warmth. No welcome. Just a directive." Keanu didn't mind. He didn't need courtesy. He needed space, time, and a moment to breathe before fulfilling a promise that had brought him 800 miles from Los Angeles to this frozen corner of Detroit. He slid into the booth, the cracked vinyl creaking under his weight. Snow melted from his boots, leaving a faint trail across the floor. He peeled off his parka, revealing calloused hands and the kind of posture that suggested he'd seen enough of the world to know when to stay still. His fingers brushed the urn in his pocket, a small, unassuming thing that held the ashes of Tommy, a stuntman who'd been more than a colleague. Back in '94, on a chaotic movie set in this very city, Keanu, Tommy, and Jean-Claude Van Damme had shared beers in this bar, laughing over near misses and bad takes. Tommy had died last year, a freak accident on a stunt gone wrong, and Keanu had promised to scatter his ashes here, where their friendship had taken root. The weight of that promise kept him steady, even as the room's eyes lingered on him like wolves circling a stray. When a server, a wiry woman named Lena with a tired smile, approached, Keanu spoke softly, his voice almost lost in the bar's din. "Coffee, black, hot." Lena raised an eyebrow, scribbling on her notepad, but didn't comment. Behind her, laughter erupted. A burly man at the bar, his Carhartt jacket stained with grease, snorted loudly. "Coffee? What is this, a damn Starbucks?" The crowd chuckled, a few heads turning to gawk at the stranger in the booth. Keanu didn't flinch. He placed a single napkin on the table, smoothing its creases with deliberate care, as if the act could steady the world around him. His eyes flicked to the door, waiting. He'd told Van Damme to meet him here, a reunion to honor Tommy, and though the snow might delay him, Keanu knew his friend would show. Eddie, the bartender, leaned forward, his voice carrying over the jukebox. "You waitin' for someone, buddy?" Keanu nodded, his words barely audible. "An old friend." He didn't say a name. He didn't need to. Some bonds didn't require explanation, and some arrivals didn't need to be early. The coffee arrived in a chipped ceramic mug, steam curling up like a faint promise. Keanu thanked Lena in a low murmur, his eyes scanning the room every few seconds, reading the crowd's body language the way most people read menus. The air was tense, not yet hostile, but alive with the undercurrent of a place that didn't trust outsiders. Across the bar, a man stood out, Jake, Iron Sullivan, a 6'3", 240-pound ex-auto worker who'd made Rusty's his kingdom since the plant shut down 2 years ago. His arms, thick as steel beams, were crossed over a faded Red Wings jersey, his buzzed head gleaming under the neon. Jake's eyes locked on Keanu, narrowing as he took in the quiet stranger sipping coffee. To Jake, this guy was an insult, a soft-spoken drifter in a bar built on grit. He leaned toward Eddie, his voice a low growl. "What's this? We got hipsters in here now?" A few patrons laughed, the sound sharp and mocking. Keanu didn't look up, but his fingers tightened slightly around the mug. Outside, the snow fell harder, piling up in drifts 2 feet high against the windows. The stage was set, and Rusty's Tavern was about to learn what happens when silence is mistaken for weakness. In Rusty's Tavern, Jake, Iron Sullivan, loomed like a storm cloud, his 6'3", 240-pound frame dominating the bar. A former auto worker, Jake had forged his pride on the assembly line until the plant's closure 2 years ago left him adrift. Now, Rusty's was his empire, his Red Wings jersey, and buzzed head a warning to outsiders. Keanu Reeves, sipping black coffee in the corner booth, was an affront to Jake's rule, a quiet stranger whose calm demeanor and fancy order mocked the bar's gritty code. Jake's eyes narrowed, his knuckles whitening around his beer. "This ain't a coffee shop, pretty boy," he growled, his voice cutting through Tom Petty's wail on the jukebox. The crowd, mechanics, drifters, and barflies, chuckled, their laughter sharp like broken glass. A guy in a Carhartt jacket nudged his buddy, smirking. "Betty's lost." Keanu ignored the taunts, his fingers brushing the urn in his pocket, where Tommy's ashes rested. His mission, to honor his late stuntman friend, kept him steady, his eyes flicking to the snow-dusted door, waiting for Van Damme. Jake, sensing no reaction, stomped closer, boots thudding on the hardwood. "What's this?" he barked, jerking a thumb at Keanu. "We got poets in here now?" More laughs erupted, some patrons pulling out phones to film the spectacle. The bar's pack mentality took hold, but Pops, an old-timer with a weathered lion's cap, watched from his stool, his brow furrowed with unease. Jake leaned over the 2-foot table, slamming down his beer. "How about a friendly arm wrestle, huh? Show us you ain't soft." Keanu met his gaze, calm but unyielding, and nodded. The crowd hooted, circling the booth. Their hands locked, Keanu's steady grip surprising Jake's raw power. After a tense 10 seconds, Keanu's arm pinned Jake's to the table, the thud echoing like a gavel. The bar went quiet, phones frozen mid-record. Keanu leaned back, unfazed, but Jake's face twisted with fury. "Lucky break," he spat, shoving Keanu hard with both hands. Keanu stumbled 5 feet, his coffee mug crashing to the floor, black liquid splashing across the scarred wood. The crowd roared, some cheering Jake, others filming the chaos. Pops shook his head, muttering, "Enough!" Jake loomed over Keanu, his 240-pound shadow a threat. "You don't belong here," he hissed. Keanu stood, brushing off his parka, his eyes steady. "I'm not here for trouble," he said softly. But the urn in his pocket burned like a vow, and the door creaked open behind him. The door of Rusty's Tavern slammed open, a gust of 20-degree Marv air swirling snow into the neon-lit haze. Jean-Claude Van Damme stood framed in the doorway, his 6-foot silhouette cutting through the glow of Budweiser signs, his leather jacket glistening with melted flakes. His silver-tinged hair caught the light, but his eyes, sharp, unyielding, commanded the room. The jukebox mid-Tom Petty chorus seemed to falter as his voice boomed, warm, yet edged with steel. "Keanu, you picking fights over coffee now?" The crowd froze, phones mid-record, as Van Damme's grin diffused the crackling tension, his charisma shifting the bar's energy like a tide. Even the neon flickered, as if paying respect to the legend striding across the scarred hardwood. Keanu, still standing after Jake's shove, met Van Damme's gaze, a faint smile breaking his stoic mask. Their bond flickered in a memory years ago. On a snowy Detroit film set, they'd pulled their stuntman friend Tommy from a wrecked car, laughing through the chaos of a botched explosion. That night, in this very bar, they'd toasted to survival. Now, Keanu waited to honor Tommy's ashes, and Van Damme's arrival was the final piece of that vow. The crowd, unaware of their history, sensed something shift. Jake Iron Sullivan's 240-pound dominance suddenly seemed fragile. Jake, his face twisted with rage, sneered at Keanu, oblivious to the newcomer. "You're done, pretty boy," he growled, lunging forward, his fist arcing toward Keanu's chest. But Van Damme moved, swift as a shadow, stepping between them. His presence stopped Jake cold, their eyes locking 3 feet apart. The bar held its breath, the jukebox's hum the only sound. Van Damme tilted his head, his voice low, gravelly. "You sure you want to dance with my friend?" Jake scoffed, but his bravado wavered, sweat beading on his brow. Then, in a nod to his 80s action hero glory, Van Damme raised his right leg, his boot hovering an inch from Jake's chin. The high kick, perfectly balanced, a steel pendulum frozen mid-swing, was a masterclass in control, his 6-foot frame steady as stone. The crowd gasped, a woman in a Pistons cap whispering, "That's him." Jake's eyes widened, his 6'3" bulk shrinking under the weight of recognition. This wasn't just a man. This was Van Damme, the Bloodsport legend, his skill undimmed by time. The boot lingered, a silent warning as Keanu stood back, arms folded, his calm anchoring the moment. Van Damme lowered his leg, slow and deliberate, his gaze never leaving Jake. "Walk away," he said, the words soft but final. Jake's fists clenched, pride warring with fear, as the bar waited for his next move. The air in Rusty's Tavern crackled with tension, the 20-degree of chill outside forgotten, as Jake Iron Sullivan's 6'3", 240-pound frame loomed over Jean-Claude Van Damme. Jake's warning ignored. His pride stung. He roared, swinging a wild haymaker toward Van Damme's jaw. The crowd, mechanics, barflies, and drifters, leaned forward, phones mid-record, expecting a brawl. But Van Damme, his 6-foot silhouette a study in calm, sidestepped with liquid grace, his leather jacket catching the neon glow. Jake's fist sliced empty air, momentum throwing him off balance. In that split second, Van Damme spun, his martial arts precision honed by decades of discipline, and unleashed a controlled roundhouse kick. His boot traced a perfect arc, striking Jake's chest with a thunderous crack, folding his 240-pound frame like a cheap chair. Jake flew 8 feet, crashing into the jukebox with a sickening crunch. Glass shattered, the machine skipping Tom Petty's Free Fallin' into a warped wail before dying. Beer bottles rattled on tables, and the crowd gasped. Phones frozen mid-record, mouths agape. Pops, the old-timer in a lion's cap, muttered, "That's Van Damme," his voice barely audible, yet it rippled through the bar like a spark in dry grass. The room exhaled as one, a single lung stunned by the spectacle. A woman in a Pistons cap dropped her beer, foam splashing 2 feet across the floor. The fight wasn't just a scuffle. It was a masterclass, Van Damme's precision over brute force evoking the choreographed glory of 80s action flicks, a thrill American audiences craved. Keanu Reeves stood back, arms folded, his parka still damp from the snow. His calm presence anchored the chaos, reinforcing he didn't need to fight. His friend had his back. His fingers brushed the urn in his pocket, Tommy's ashes a quiet reminder of why he was here. Keanu's eyes met Van Damme's for a moment, a silent nod passing between them, forged years ago on a Detroit set where they'd saved Tommy from a wreck. Now, they honored him not with fists, but with loyalty. Van Damme adjusted his stance, his gaze sweeping the bar, daring anyone to step forward. No one did. Jake groaned, slumped against the wrecked jukebox, blood mixing with spilled whiskey at his feet, his empire shattered by a single surgical strike. The crowd's jeers had died, replaced by awe. A young guy in a Carhartt jacket lowered his phone, shaking his head, as if filming felt profane now. Pops leaned forward, whispering, "That's how it's done." The bar's neon flickered, casting jagged shadows over the wreckage, a testament to what happens when pride meets legend. Van Damme turned to Keanu, a faint grin breaking through. "Coffee's cold now," he quipped, the words slicing through the silence, setting the stage for the reckoning to come. The wreckage of Rusty's Tavern lay still, the jukebox silenced, its shattered glass glinting under the neon glow. Jake, Iron Sullivan, slumped 8 feet away, his 240-pound frame broken against the machine, blood and whiskey pooling at his boots. The air, thick with the tang of spilled beer and the 20-degree foam chill seeping through the door, hung heavy with a new weight shame. The crowd, mechanics, drifters, and barflies, who jeered Keanu Reeves' coffee order and filmed his humiliation, now stood frozen, their phones lowered, their laughter choked into silence. Jean-Claude Van Damme's single, surgical kick had not just felled Jake, but shattered the bar's bravado, leaving awe and regret in its wake. Keanu, arms folded, stood calm, his parka damp, the urn in his pocket a quiet anchor for his mission to honor Tommy. Pops, the old-timer, in a weathered lion's cap, broke the hush, his boots scuffing the hardwood as he stepped forward. His grizzled face, etched with decades of Detroit winters, softened with guilt. "Drinks on me," he rasped, raising his whiskey 2 feet toward Keanu and Van Damme. "For you fellas. We misjudged you." His voice cracked, an apology for the bar's hostility, and the crowd stirred, heads nodding. A young woman, Sarah in a faded Pistons cap, swallowed hard, her eyes fixed on the floor. "We called him a nobody," she murmured, barely audible over the neon's hum. "We were wrong." Her words landed like snow outside, soft but undeniable, sparking a shift in the room. The transformation was active, not passive. A burly mechanic in a Carhartt jacket grabbed a mop, sloshing it through the spilled coffee and glass 5 feet from Keanu's booth. His head bowed as if cleaning was penance. Sarah joined, sweeping shards with a broom, her eyes down, learning respect the hard way. Others followed. A drifter righted a tipped chair. Another wiped down a table slick with beer. The bar, once a stage for Jake's empire, became a community reckoning, each act a step toward redemption. Pops raised his glass again, voice gruff. "To strangers who ain't strangers," he said, toasting Keanu and Van Damme, who stood by the bar, their presence a quiet rebuke to the crowd's earlier scorn. Keanu nodded, accepting a fresh coffee, his gaze steady but kind. Van Damme, leather jacket still glistening, sipped a whiskey, his faint grin easing the tension. The neon flickered, casting shadows over the mopped floor, a symbol of Rusty's cleansing. Jake groaned, ignored, his fall a lesson etched in the crowd's silence. Sarah glanced at Keanu, her voice low. "You didn't deserve that." Keanu's reply was soft, almost lost in the bar's hum. "No one does." The words, like Tommy's ashes in his pocket, carried the weight of respect reclaimed, binding the bar in a shared, hard-won truth. The door of Rusty's Tavern clicked shut behind Keanu Reeves and Jean-Claude Van Damme, sealing the chaos of the night within its weathered walls. Outside, the Detroit night stung at 15 degrees, snow falling in soft, relentless curtains, piling into drifts 2 feet high against the bar's flickering neon sign. The Budweiser logo buzzed, casting a red glow over the icy lot, where Keanu's black boots crunched through the powder, his parka still damp from the storm. In his hand, the small metal urn, holding the ashes of their late stuntman friend Tommy, felt heavier than its size suggested. Van Damme, his leather jacket dusted with snow, walked beside him, his 6-foot frame steady despite the biting cold. The neon's hum was the only sound, save for the faint whistle of wind through the empty interstate beyond. Keanu stopped 10 feet from Rusty's, under the sign's faltering glow. He opened the urn, his breath clouding in the frigid air, and tipped it gently. Tommy's ashes drifted into the snow, mingling with the flakes. A quiet farewell to the man who'd bound them in laughter and loyalty on a Detroit film set decades ago. The snow covered the ashes like a blanket, symbolizing closure, a promise kept, a wound healed. Van Damme clapped Keanu's shoulder, his voice warm but gruff. "Tommy's home, man." Keanu nodded, his eyes tracing the falling snow, a faint smile breaking through. "You always pick the worst bars, Keanu," Van Damme teased, his grin flashing in the neon's light. Keanu chuckled, his voice soft but clear. "And you always show up to save them." Their laughter echoed, a fleeting warmth in the 15-degree night, their bond unbroken by time or loss. Inside Rusty's, the bar was a cathedral of silence. Jake Iron Sullivan slumped by the wrecked jukebox, his 240-pound frame cradled by shattered glass and spilled whiskey, his ribs aching from Van Damme's surgical kick. His pride, once a towering empire, lay as broken as the machine behind him. The crowd, mechanics, drifters, and barflies, stood still, their earlier jeers replaced by a heavy quiet. Pops, the old-timer in a lion's cap, leaned against the bar, his whiskey untouched. "Respect don't shout," he whispered, his voice carrying the weight of the night's lesson. "But it hits hard." Sarah, the young woman in a Pistons cap, swept glass 5 feet from Keanu's booth, her movements deliberate as if cleaning could erase her earlier scorn. A mechanic mopped coffee stains. Another righted a chair, their actions a collective atonement for misjudging the stranger who'd walked in seeking only coffee and peace. The bar's transformation mirrored a deeper truth, one rooted in American values of loyalty, humility, and second chances. Rusty's, once a stage for Jake's bravado, had become a community reborn, its patrons learning that strength isn't in loud boasts or quick fists, but in the quiet resolve of a man honoring a friend, and the fierce loyalty of another who'd defend him. The neon flickered, casting shadows over the mopped floor, a symbol of renewal, like the snow outside, covering old wounds with a fresh start. Jake, nursing his ribs, met no one's eyes, his fall a lesson etched in the bar's memory. Underestimate the quiet at your peril. This night wasn't just a fight. It was a story of redemption, of bonds that endure, and of respect earned through action, not words. Keanu and Van Damme, two legends who walked humbly, had reminded Rusty's that true strength lies in standing for what's right, even when the odds seem stacked. The snow kept falling, 3 inches deep now, blanketing Detroit in silence, as if the city itself honored the moment. Pops raised his glass again, a silent toast to the men who'd vanished into the night, their boots leaving faint tracks, soon buried by the storm. To you, the audience, thank you for writing this tale with us, from the first crunch of snow to the final drift of ashes. Your time, your heart, your imagination, they're what makes stories like this live. If this hit you deep, if Keanu's quiet resolve or Van Damme's lightning kick stirred something in you, share it with someone who needs a reminder respect walks softly, but strikes true. And hey, if you love this ride, hit that subscribe button on our channel. Join us for more stories of grit, heart, and redemption, where the underdog shines and loyalty wins. Let's keep the fire burning together in the cold Detroit night.